At this point, our president's panel, like to bring to the stage Jeff Higley, VP Digital Media and Communications with Hotel News Now and STR. Jeff?
Good afternoon, everyone. Whoa. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Thanks for being here this afternoon. We've got a great lineup here. We're going to talk about a lot of things in 45 minutes. My name is Jeff Higley. I'm with Hotel News Now and STR. And again, thank you for being here this afternoon. So we're going to introduce these panelists. Quick rundown of the company, and then I have a question to ask each of you. So we'll start with Ken Greene, the President of the Americas for Radisson Hotel Group. Ken, 30 seconds about your company.
Yeah, so Radisson Hotel Group, basically a company that's been around for a long time, but has gone through a major transformation over the last 2 years. We were recently acquired by Jinjiang, the largest hotel company in Asia. And combined, we're now the second largest hotel in the world, whether it's rooms or sites. And we've got a strategic plan we're putting in place that is pretty exciting. We go to market in this part of the world with Radisson Blue in the upper upscale segment, Radisson Red, our very cool lifestyle brand. Think art, music, fashion, and then Radisson, our full service core to our company. Park Inn by Radisson. We're introducing a new prototype real soon in April, and then our sort of our little engine that could Country Inn Suites that is just really great return on investment. We appreciate you all being here, and it should be a good day.
All right, well, thanks for being here, Ken. This is going to be the most in-depth question of the day.
Okay.
It's going to cause the most thought for you. If you had to describe the hotel industry as a vehicle, what vehicle would it be?
That's a really great one. Probably. That's a great question right now.
You didn't get any advance notice.
With all the I hate to say this, right? But you know what I thought of, and this is going to sound really funny. But there's so much going on in the industry, and there's so many brands going on. I sort of thought about the little Scooby-Doo van vehicle.
The mystery machine.
The mystery machine.
Right.
I think there's, it's just, there's a lot going on in the industry, and I think, we'll still, things are evolving at a pretty rapid pace, and everybody's still trying to figure out. Consumers are trying to figure out what we're doing. Developers are trying to figure out what's going on. And it is a little bit of a mystery right now. So,
all right, great answer, I must say. That's pretty good. Okay, next up we have Greg Mount, the President and CEO of RLH Corporation. Greg, a little bit about RLH.
Sure. We've been on a trajectory now for the last 5 years. We started with about 55 hotels in 8 states, where the bulk of our EBITDA came through our owned hotels. We're now approaching 1,500 in all 48 states. And so it's been a really great ride for the team. And we've focused a lot of our success on our capabilities in technology and innovation, and really focusing on, where the consumer is going and how to best, acquire that demand, and to be able to drive not only demand to our hotels, but in a very cost-effective way. So the company continues to grow. We are a publicly traded company, and we're going to continue to utilize our platform for additional acquisitions and other transitional opportunities. So thank you for joining us today.
All right, thank you for being here. So if you had to describe the hotel industry with the name of a song, what song would it be?
Maybe a Pink Floyd song.
All right. Comfortably Numb, is that?
Yeah, that would probably that would be a good one.
All right. Well, thank you for being here, Greg. We appreciate that. Next up is Corry Oakes, the CEO of OTO Development. Corry, a little bit about OTO.
Jeff, I really don't like these questions.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, wait till I get yours. I'm Corry Oakes, and welcome to Atlanta, for those of you from somewhere else. We are a Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt franchisee. We're primarily a developer. We've developed about $2.5 billion worth of product, primarily on the 2 coasts, since 2004 when we started the company. We also are a third-party manager for a couple institutional clients, and that's kind of our story.
Okay. So if you had to describe the hotel industry as a candy bar, what candy bar would it be?
Dottie's Toffee from Spartanburg, South Carolina, which happens to be my home. And I encourage everyone to go buy some Dottie's Toffee. It's got a little bit of something for everybody.
All right. I thought for sure you were going to say payday, but you owners like that stuff. Well, thank you very much for being here, Corry. I appreciate that. And last but not least, Mitch Patel, the president and CEO of Vision Hospitality Group from Chattanooga. Mitch, a little bit about your company.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I was working as an engineer, traffic engineer, right here in this great city of Atlanta, and I just gave up. If you Ubered or drived around this city, and wound up getting into this business that I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, my hometown. And we started with one small hotel, one big dream. Today, we have 36 hotels in our portfolio and 14 hotels in our pipeline, and I absolutely found my passion, and that's a little bit about Vision Hospitality Group.
Okay, so you were responsible for this traffic flow pattern in Atlanta. Is that what's going on?
You could blame me.
Okay. All right, so if you had to describe the hotel industry as an animal, what animal would it be?
Wow. These are good questions. I had the answer for the car, Ford F-150, because we're tried and proven, right? No, but I guess an elephant. I'll say an elephant. We're a huge industry, dependable, proven, and sustainable, and yeah.
And boy, do you have memory, right? I mean, this industry has a memory a mile long.
We should have a memory.
All right, well, thanks for playing along with that game. We'll get some seriousness going. I'm going to start with a question that I think every one of the 1,800 people attending the conference this year has some sort of vested interest in, and it's all about margin and where margin is today. So the two owners, I'm going to give you the first crack at this, and maybe margin erosion is how we'll produce it, or how we'll present it. Is it a real issue now, and how do you combat it? Mitch, why don't you start?
Sure. There's no question that we're seeing margin erosion. When we were looking at our portfolio, the same hotels 10, 12 years ago, even though we've had tremendous RevPAR growth in the last 8, 9 years, it is becoming more and more challenging operating our hotels more than ever, mainly due to, obviously, we all know this, labor. 6 years ago when we were at these conferences, the only labor challenges we were talking about was the construction industry. But there wasn't a lot of talk on the operations side of our business with labor. And just came back from Alice in January, right? That was probably the number one topic of discussion, was the labor challenges we're all facing. So obviously with record unemployment rate, low record unemployment rates, and just rising costs in almost every aspect, from benefits, health insurance, to even the cities and the communities that our hotels are in, and all jumping on the bandwagon, where it seems like business improvement districts are popping up everywhere, and real estate taxes are going up. So clearly we are all challenged as operators with erosion of margins.
So Corry, how do you combat that at this point? How real is it, and what are the steps you can take?
Well, just to tack on to what Mitch just said, we've had this kind of longer-term trend of margin erosion, and short-term, over the last couple of years, it has exploded. And just as a data point, first of all, you think about nationally, Deloitte just came out and said there are 1.3 million vacant hospitality jobs right now. At 3.9% unemployment, headed towards something closer to 3%, where in the world are we going to find those folks? And so what happens, you have enormous wage pressure. So we took 10 hotels that we own across the country, primarily urban markets, but across the country, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, West Coast. 16 to 17, payroll expense jumped 5.5%. 17 to 18, payroll jumped 8.5%. RevPAR did not jump 8.5%. Mitch mentioned property taxes. Property taxes last year across those same 10 properties up over 5%. Other benefit costs, insurance costs, just enormous increases. And we as an industry do not model that in our pro formas.
Why not?
So at some point, that will come home to roost.
Yeah.
So how do we combat that? I think we have to think about changing the way we approach the business, the service model. Why we are always the last to change is beyond me. But when you buy a plane ticket, you pay for it. Why are we waiting till 24 hours before somebody's supposed to show up to let them make another decision about paying for the room or not? If somebody stays with us 3 days, we should charge them for cleaning the room. Now, obviously, the room should be clean when they arrive, but we're happy to clean your room, but there should be a fee associated with that. It's better for the environment. It's better for our team members. 1.3 million unfilled positions. Those team members that are there working show up every day. They get a housekeeping board that is jammed full, and they start their day immediately stressed out. So they're doing a less than perfect job in their role. That they want to do a great job, but they're pressed for time, and we're asking them to do too much. So I just think we have to. Those are two examples. There are many more. I think we have to rethink the business model and how we package it to the consumer. Every other consumer product today has embraced personalization. We should embrace personalization.
Yeah, I guess you probably get an argument about hospitality there, and how does that, the fine line between that. So we can talk about that.
Let's take great care of them at the bar. Let's take great care of them around the pool. Let's take great care of them when we pass in the hallway, so that we actually have time to make a connection, instead of being so pressed for time that it's robotic.
Okay. So, Greg, how do you combat that as a brand? How do you look at that margin erosion and helping owners, figure it out?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is when we started this process 5 years ago, we really focused on building our platform in a way that would allow us to keep our costs down and thus keep the costs of our franchisees down, and we've been very successful in that. And our demand is getting close to some of the bigger systems. We just do it a little bit differently and a little less expensively, and we pass that on to our franchisees. And there was a recent HVS study that came out that showed our fees and our costs are anywhere from 50% to 2/3 less than our competitors. And I think that's an important aspect. The brands have a responsibility to work along with the franchisees and leverage technology and leverage innovation to be able to reduce those costs. We don't need to charge 4 or 5% per folio for a loyalty program. Yeah. We can charge less than 1% and we can still execute on it. And I think those are the important things that a brand needs to do. And at the same time, the brands need to innovate. And one example for us is, back in December at our conference, we rolled out a robot that can do everything in the room but make the bed. And it's in the process right now of being tested. And that doesn't mean that it supplements the housekeeper, but what it means is that it can work alongside that housekeeper and maybe reduce, some of the requirements that are in that room. And I think those are important things for brands to look at and to, help evolve along and pass on to the franchisees.
So, Ken, the pressure on the owners, trying to bridge that gap between lower RevPAR, higher expenses. How does Radisson? How should brands respond?
Listen. Brands succeed because you have great owners, and we have to protect their return on investment, and so we have to maximize their return on investment. And so, I always look at it as a funnel, right? You start with the revenue piece. That's that's the big bucket, right? So how do you maximize revenue? How do you squeeze every penny out of revenue? You have to have the right yield management systems. It costs a lot to acquire companies on third parties. You have to have the right loyalty program in place. Your best customers are those that come back over and over again. When they do, they come back cheaper through a more direct channel. You got to have the right technology for yield management. What technology today can replace. A person that's sitting in a room doing yield management can't compete with having the right technology in place and competing. So you want to get every dollar that you possibly can maximize on the revenue side. As you go down through the expense side of the funnel, you got to get more, less expenses, so you get more coming out for every dollar. I mean, labor's expensive. Best way to combat labor expense is hire the right people and keep them. And you do that by getting the right culture in place. If you do that, you got happy employees. They're more willing to stay with you. They're more willing to help you recruit. That's a big expense, and we really need to focus on that. As a brand, we got to get rid of stupid standards. We look at that every single day. Everything we roll out as a brand has to have a return on investment. If it doesn't, we should have no business doing it. So it's got to be well tested every single day. And then using technology in whatever way it is to cut back expenses without losing that personal touch with the guest. Every single day we got to be innovating and looking at it. And I agree with all the panelists up here. It's not one silver bullet that's going to make a difference. It's doing all these things with great execution every single day.
Let's shift a little bit to the investment side of things. The bid-ask spread right now, it's been pretty wide for a long time. Corry, have you seen that shrinking, growing, or staying about the same? And what do you think is going to happen the rest of 19?
I think every piece of real estate is unique, and so there are markets where there is still a huge bid-ask spread, and there are markets where expectations on both sides are coming in. So I think you've seen equity acknowledge that with risk-free capital being where it is, perhaps the spread that they've been making in the past was a little bit rich. And so those expectations have come in. And on the flip side, I think you've seen in some markets, because of things like supply and other things, you've seen pricing come down as well. On the flip side, the refi markets are so strong that a lot of existing assets can be refinanced, proceeds taken out, and still own the asset and live to fight another day.
Okay. Mitch, how about land cost and how do they affect investment these days?
Sure. Land, obviously, the land cost is a huge component of the overall development cost of a project. We were paying $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a key on a lot of our projects. It's escalated to as high as $20,000, $25,000, even $30,000 a key, depending on the market that you're in. But just to give you an example, Jeff, I mean, it's the overall arching challenge is just the development costs in general has grown so much in the last 5-6 years. Construction costs have gone up 10-12% a year. Land costs, I'll give you an example of land cost. We developed a hotel, opened in 2014 in Nashville in the neighborhood called the Gulch. So back a couple of years earlier, we paid $30 a square foot, and I thought that was a lot. $300 a square foot right across the street now. $300. So you've got land costs, construction costs, all these other costs have escalated over the last 5-6 years, and RevPAR has not grown at that rate. So it is absolutely challenging, and we're looking at 15, 20, 30 deals probably before we'll execute one. And there are just so many deals that just don't pencil like they probably did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago because of those challenges.
So that Fairfield Inn in the Gulch, is that for sale? Or are you holding that for a while, or what's up with that?
We've had a lot of offers for that property. Developed it for $18 million. I think 13 something was the debt. 1 year later, I got appraised at $42 million. And I think it's doing like $5 million plus NOI right now. Of course, we've got a lot of offers, but this is what we did. Instead of selling it, it's like what Corry was talking about. We went in and got Lifeco, 20-year term, 4% rate, 20-year lock rate, and took out our equity at $18 million, like 42% or so to the value. And we're long-term holders, and last time I checked, cash flow is not a bad thing. And so we put a rooftop bar on it. It's the first rooftop bar in Nashville. I think our marketing now is the original rooftop bar because there's like 25 of them in Nashville. And people thought we were nuts to put a rooftop bar on a Fairfield Inn Suites, but it had beautiful views, and we wanted to lift the rates literally, lift the rates of what we think we could attain on that brand. Yeah. And we were able to do that because now people are having this incredible experience at the rooftop bar. And it's not just about the revenues and the margins that you could generate on the rooftop bar. It's the ADR and occupancy that you could generate for the hotel, because it's a lot easier to just press a button in the elevator and go back to your room after a couple of drinks before and after where you're going. So we are pretty excited about doing more of those type of food and beverage outlets.
So let's stick with the brand conversation itself. Greg, soft brands are really the hot product in the industry. I mean, they get me all verklempt here. What's your take on those? How's that been working out for owners?
We've with the recent announcement of our labs and Canvas integrated systems, we took a real thorough look at this. And what we're seeing is that the gap between a soft brand and a brand and a system is starting to close at a very fast pace from a cost standpoint. And I think that the independent hotels that have stepped out to acquire that soft brand in themselves have done it for a number of reasons. One is to get better pricing and to get access to better technology. But I think unfortunately they're losing kind of the independence of their independence, and that is, I think, a challenge. And so while I think it works to jam another hotel into a marketplace, I think it continues to create challenges for the owners in those markets by doing that. And so I think the combination of the cost and the gap closing for owners, and then the fact that now many of these brands are pressing standards on them that they didn't press on them before, and I think all of that combined is problematic. So I think that for us, we looked at providing a solution to the independent hotel operator where they can keep their independence, they can use all of our systems, our pricing, all of our technology at a cost basis that works for them. We actually found out that most of these people are paying anywhere from 30 to 50% more as an independent hotel than what a typical brand hotel pays. And so we think there's a great opportunity there to allow people not to just have the soft brand as a choice, but to keep their inherent independence, not be associated with the brand, but get the benefit of the technology.
Before we go on, just a quick show of hands. How many people in the audience have owned, developed, or bought or sold a soft brand in the last year or so? Okay, a few out there. Okay. So, Corey, what are your thoughts about that whole phenomenon? Is that something OTO is involved in, and how do you look at it?
I love to hear Greg's comments about and Kentu about not forcing, from a brand perspective, things on the owner that don't make sense, because it is a challenging environment. We do not currently have a soft branded hotel. We have considered developing some. In our case, in the markets where we currently develop, it's made more sense to go with a brand family that we know, and within that brand family, a sub-brand that has some brand awareness. But we have certainly thought about it, and I'm sure at some point we'll do one.
Okay, Ken, how about your thoughts, real quick?
Yeah, I think limited place for it, right? I think a lot of the soft brands have started, as they've gone down the different segments. They're just a replacement for another brand because certain companies are impacted out in certain brands. I think it plays a really great role, and this is our strategy, is really on the luxury side. Where there are no brand standards imposed. They're historic center city properties, very unique boutique type of properties that have great quality. And so for us, it's more about the quality and linking them into our reservation platform to be able to drive them more effective business, efficient business, and representing us really well and giving us destination locations for our loyalty program. So we just started rolling out the Radisson collection. So, it'd be historic property, whatever your name is, Radisson collection. in Europe, and we'll bring that into the U.S. and the rest of the Americas over the next probably next 2 years, once we've established Radisson Blues across the country. But I think that's where the soft brand really plays a great role. I think as you start to go down the segments, I think it becomes, as Greg said, problematic.
So, Mitch, like many of the attendees of this conference, as you said in your opening, you started with 1, you grew to 5, and et cetera, et cetera. Now your portfolio includes several soft brands, including the Edwin, which you opened up in Chattanooga, which has a really bit of a different approach to it with F&B, things that you really didn't have a lot of experience. So how does that all come together as you grow your portfolio, like a lot of the people in the audience are going to be doing over the next few years?
Sure. So the Edwin just came out as an opportunity. We, like Corry, we are mainstream developers and partner with proven brands. And it was going to be difficult to get this property rezoned, and so some great things do come by accident sometimes. And the community, the neighborhood wanted an independent hotel. And so we started looking into it, and so we were going down this independent hotel direction, true, just completely independent hotel direction, even though we've never done anything like that before. And I grew up in an 11-room motel that was an independent hotel in California, but nothing like this. And so this, this is the best way I could describe it, Jeff. With a brand. And I've said this many times. I mean, you pay $75,000. There's a bow on it. There's a box. You open it up, and everything is in that box. Everything that you need. The prototype plans, the do not disturb sign, and there's even a little outlet that you could plug into the engine. And with an independent hotel, there is nothing in that box. So you have to curate everything in that box, and you don't just curate it, you have to execute it extremely well. The customer that's looking for this product to see right through it. And so it has to have a story, and there's a lot of branding that goes in curating that box. But talking about soft brands, this is where I had a lot of fun doing this. But where I stopped having fun is when I started researching PMS systems, distribution channels, and those things. So that's where soft branding really helps. You get to curate that box, and there's an outlet also that you could tap into. And so we tied ourselves into the autograph collection. Now, it could be debated. Are you going to make more money or less money with a soft brand or truly independent? But the one thing for sure is I could sleep better at night. And that's pretty important at this stage in our career.
Hear, hear.
Financing was not a...
Let's look a little broader. The state of the industry. Anybody want to jump in on this? How's the first quarter been? Do you expect 2019 to play out the same way 2018 did? And do you see any time down the road where there's any dark clouds on the horizon? A lot of questions rolled up in there. Anybody want to tackle any or all of them? Greg, I know you're dying to.
I am dying to. Look, I think that the argument to be made, and some very bright people have made this argument recently, that we may have just seen the downturn kind of in its entirety, and we may be bouncing out of that and staying stable for quite some time. China plays a really big part of that, and of course with the announcement today, who knows which way that's going to go. But I think that from our point of view, we're feeling pretty confident that it's going to remain, while a little meek, it's going to remain consistent. And that as long as the unemployment, which is a double-edged sword, remains below 4%, I think that's a good indicator for us. And if we can, help, reduce the costs and improve the margin zone for our franchisees, I think that's an equally important part of what we need to do.
Okay, so Ken, you heard Greg say that some people think that the bottom has been hit and maybe we're back up. Do you prescribe to that theory, or?
Listen, none of us have a crystal ball. What I can tell you is that sentiment, consumer sentiment is still strong. I mean, it can always be stronger. It was a tough, I wouldn't say tough start to the year. I mean, the comps were sort of tough based on what happened last year with the hurricanes. Depends on your distribution and where your property is. If you were in a hurricane zone where you weren't really affected and you had 6 months of all that business being fully occupied, last year, I mean, your comps are a little tough this year. But from an economic perspective, listen, I think we're going to bump along a little bit. I think we're going to keep on seeing a little bit of an increase, maybe a little slower pace than what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. I don't see the big drop. I just don't see it happening. And so, I mean, I would love to hear. I mean, I'd love to hear Greg say, "Hey, listen, we maybe hit the bottom and we're going up." Listen, I mean, we might drop a little bit here and there, but it's not about the short-term piece. It's about the long-term trend, and the long-term trend looks very positive still.
Corry, if 2% RevPAR growth is the bottom of the cycle, you'd be pretty dang happy with that, wouldn't you?
Yes, except we had a recession in 91. We had a recession in 01. We had a recession in 08. I'm not real smart, but that seems like a trend. It's 2019. The yield curve has moved against economic prosperity in the last 12 months, almost inverting. Every time it's inverted in the past, it has signaled a recession within the next 12 months. So I think it's the time to be careful. Look, we're at all-time high occupancies, all-time high rates as an industry. Things are great. We should acknowledge that things are great, but no tree grows to the sky forever. There is, in many markets, really significant supply coming. And it'll be interesting to see. We saw what happened when that kind of supply hit New York. And when all the other Airbnb and the world got a little crazy, we saw what happened there. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Nashville and Austin and smaller markets like Asheville, North Carolina. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to these huge 20+% increases in supply over a period of time. So we're cautious right now. As developers, we all want to think RevPAR will always be positive, and it unfortunately is not always positive. So I think if I were offering advice to anybody, I think it's very market specific, very sub-market specific, neighborhood specific. But in the past, we often, as an industry, picked a site because it looked good and it worked. It just sort of worked. And I think today you have to be much more analytical about underwriting those deals and really being honest about, the UFOCs all tell you to reserve 5% FF&E reserves. 5% FF&E reserves with $100 RevPAR does not cover what one of these brands is going to throw at you.
What number would?
It's not 6. Hopefully there are no bankers in here, but that's
all bankers.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Oh wait, no, we want the bankers here, right?
Yeah. And just as we've talked about, the other expenses going up too. So I think this is a time where you have to be careful.
Okay. So Mitch, the recessions or the downturns that Corry talked about, most of them were very influenced by a black swan event, external event beyond our control. Preparedness is really important in that case. So as we're looking at this 10 years, this cycle, 10 years, when the inevitable comes, how do you prepare for that? How do you get ready for something you don't know is going to come? When?
Sure. So we are definitely overdue. I know we do not really want to talk about it as hoteliers, but it's 10 years removed from the last down cycle. So as I wasn't great in math either, even though I became an engineer, but that's a pretty long time. And so, look, we can't control external events, and we can't spend a lot of time worrying about that. So in our company, obviously there's the fundamentals. I do want to talk about the fundamentals of this business just real quick. As Chris Nacetta says, whom we'll hear Friday, we're in the golden age of travel. We're in the experience business, experience commodity business. And so I think, like my 18-year-old, my eldest, her first paycheck, she wanted to spend it on travel. That's music to my ears, right? And so it's, I think that demand is going to continue to grow in the next 10, 15, 20 years, obviously in the United States and worldwide. Now, supply, just real quick, we just hit our historical 20-something year average in 18 and 19. The historical average we just hit, right? So demand and supply, of course, they're going to come together here soon. But your question about being prepared, we are in a hurricane zone, and the storms come and go. We just don't know how bad it's going to be and when it's coming, but it's coming, so be prepared. What you can control is be prepared. So what we say in our company, we're going to have the best brick house in the industry. So what makes a brick house? It's the brand that you partner with, the market that you're in, the debt service that you carry. Our debt coverage ratio is 2.3 as a company. And how you operate your hotels. Let's not forget that this is a people business, people serving people. And our business is more transparent than ever before due to social media, right? So if your hotel's in the top 5% of this brand or in top in TripAdvisor, that makes a brick house. So if you have all those components of a brick house, when that storm comes, hopefully not only will you survive, but you will you will look for opportunities, and you'll be hunting for opportunities. As we all know, that's the best time to grow.
So Ken, you're shaking your head. I mean, the brick house theory for a brand, how does that work?
Yeah, no, I think, listen, what Mitch and Corry are saying makes perfect sense. I mean, you got to be prepared, right? And so it means not being over-levered. It means, making sure that you're being smart about cash. And so, if you believe there's a dark cloud coming, you believe that there might be, a bit of a slowdown or even a big dip. I mean, again, it's about the long term being able to survive those dips and come out stronger. Sometimes when there's a dip, that's an opportunity to build market share. You make less money. Yeah, no, we never want to do that. But if it happens, you want to be prepared to build your market share. Go steal business, get more than your fair share. And so I think as a brand, those are the type of things that we're looking at every single day, is that, in every single type of economic environment, what tools do we have, and how do you deploy those tools in each of those environments to get, to get your index over and above where your fair share is. And so I think being prepared is absolutely correct. I think that's what brands should be focused on, is trying to help their owners get prepared for every single event and have a variety of tools that work in different environments. So you can only control what you can control, right?
Okay. So I can't remember who did, but somebody mentioned Airbnb. Let's talk briefly. We all know we want a level playing field. We want them to be, following the same regulations and rules that hotels do. But if you had to say yes or no, has Airbnb been good for the hotel industry in any way? Anybody? We'll start, Mitch.
Well, the honest answer is no, we don't want Airbnb in our markets. But the politically correct answer is yes. We can't be afraid of competition. And so it's obviously we should be fighting every day for a level playing field. But we can go out and talk to our Congress and politicians and say we're afraid of competition. That's the wrong message. But we can every day talk about a fair and level playing field. Yeah. So selfishly, I have a different answer. Politically correct, I have a different answer.
Greg, any thoughts?
Yeah, look, the world is changing at a very fast pace, and we're really becoming a global community. And there's been this discussion recently, which I think is really relevant, which is, who really owns the consumer? I know some of the big brands have come out and said that they own them, but I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. And, over the last 3 or 4 years with Airbnb, we've been a little bit of a contrarian. And really, when you look at the statistics, the impact of Airbnb is very slight. And you can see it in their own actions right now with the recent acquisitions. I think they're morphing more into a channel than what they think they intended to be. And so I think, when you listen to things like Expedia and Booking.com talking about the fact that they're more worried about Amazon and Google and Facebook than they are anything else, I think it starts to tell the tale. And last year, social searches outpaced Google for the first time ever. It's an interesting thought if you start to think about it. And I think it speaks to this evolving consumer that isn't necessarily so tied to loyalty programs anymore, and and it's an expensive, when you think about it as an owner, it's an expensive, in some cases, entitlement that I'm not sure is going to continue to reap the rewards as we go forward. So the Airbnb for me just really is a issue, and in the end, they really only impacted some of the bigger gateway cities, and they really only impacted, quite frankly, when there was high demand compression in there. And so look at what they're doing. They're acquiring and becoming a channel, and I think that's all you really need to know about it.
I guess that distribution landscape is really what is changing the most with what you said, Google.
Look, I think there's a case that could be made with the way technology is going that franchising at its core, it's been this way for 40 or 50 years with royalty fees and marketing fees and everything else. I think that could change. That maybe it needs to start to become more of a transactional fee. With what I was talking about earlier with Canvas, we're not charging individual fees. We're charging a consumed transaction fee to that independent hotel. So they're only getting charged when they get a consumed room. So I think the evolution is there. I think the basis is there, and I think that the way the world is going and the global markets are going to change that. So I don't worry about Airbnb.
Well, our time has been fleeting. We're in the final 3 minutes, as you gentlemen can see. So let's start with Mitch and work this way. 30, 45 seconds. What's the one thing you want the audience to walk away from this conversation with today? Mitch?
Sure. So I've been through a couple of cycles in 2001, 2008, 9, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we are 10 years removed from that last down cycle. And as what a lot of us said is, we can't control things that we can't control, but let's work on things that you can control. So work on that brick house. There are many people, Jeff, you and I talked about this. I'm sure there's many people in this room here today that have never seen a down cycle. And so it's, and those that have been through it know what it feels like. So I would absolutely be working on that brick house like I described earlier.
Great. Thank you for being here, Mitch.
Thank
Corry,
you.
how about your 30 to 45 second summary?
I think Mitch is on to something. Adding on to that, the cycles are more violent.
Yeah.
So you look at the last two cycles, and the drop was much deeper than the previous drops. The climb out was also better. I think you have to watch things like the yield curve when past is prologue, and when something has signaled something for 50, 60 years, you're a little bit optimistic to think that that won't continue. You think about our industry as the cycle goes up, occupancy goes up, rate goes up. As it turns, occupancy starts going down, rate continues to go up for a little while and falls. Well, occupancy is starting to fall. So I think you have to be careful. I think what would I hope people would walk away from? We're in a fabulous business. People take care of one another. People help out one another. Mitch and I compete against one another, but I'm pulling for him every day to be successful because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for being here, Corry. We appreciate that. Greg, how about your final thought?
I think that, having been through a couple cycles myself, I think it bears some thought that yes, that the sky could fall at some point, and it will potentially. But I think that the globalization of our world and our markets may be finally coming to rest and having an impact, and it may not be what we think it is or what we experienced during our time in growing up. But I think what's more important is we can't continue to do things the same way we've always done them. And and technology is changing at a very fast pace, and consumer sentiment and how they look at and how they book rooms is changing at an even faster pace. And so if you're not staying up with that, then you're falling behind very quickly. And I think in the world now, nobody owns that consumer. And so it's important to understand how to make that sale at that critical time. I mean, 80% of the people in the U.S., as an example, travel only 5 to 6 nights a year. That means they're never even hitting a loyalty program. It's an interesting statistic if you think about it. So I think we have to be better and be more global about what we're doing.
Great. Thank you for being here. Ken, you get the final word.
Well, thank you, because I got the first question, which was a tough
That's
one.
right. That's right. It's all equals out.
You know, I agree with what everybody's saying. Listen, you got to be prepared and for all environments, and I think that's really, you do your due diligence and do it. But we're a people business at the end of the day. We're all reliant on other people on good times and bad times. Sometimes in the good times, we don't realize how reliant we are on other people, and so it's really sometimes the bad times define us. And define the people we're doing business. And at the end of the day, you want your guests, you want your employees, and we want our partners to be comfortable with where they're at. Bad times happen. You want those people to be loyal to you. You want your guests to be loyal to you. You want your employees to be loyal with you. And we want our customers, our customers, which are our property owners, to be loyal to us. And we want to give them a reason to do that. And so, pick your partners carefully. And it's easy to pick a lot of partners in good times. But I think when bad times happen, that's when people will really step up or they don't. And be careful on who you pick.
Great. Thank you for being here, Ken. And thank you for your attention. Please join me in thanking our panel for some great conversation.